Hi, so today we are going to do an activity around the basic parts of a plant. Now, Year 1 curriculum, science curriculum, is just about understanding, naming and identifying the parts of the plant. And Year 3 take it a bit further and they need to describe the functions of the different parts of the plant. So we are starting with a carrot and a radish out of the vegetable patch. And then once we understand the basic parts, we will go outside and we will look at different types of plants and see if we can identify the roots, the stems, the leaves, the flowers, the fruits. Now, a good comparison would be to use a monocot, something like grass, so just a little square of turf, and something with a deep taproot like these carrots and radishes, or a dandelion. And then finally, you need to look at herbaceous plants compared to something woody, ideally like a tree. Now, obviously, you're not going to see the roots of the tree unless you happen to be doing some bare root planting today. And it's not really the time of year for it. But what you can do is look at the aerial structure, the parts above ground, and then you can make science-based deductions on what you've learned, what's likely to be under the ground, under the tree. And the key here really to meet the curriculum is to ask the children to do a diagram and label it, showing all the different parts of the plant. As you can see, Howard is thrilled. So, right, first thing we're going to do is... let's have a look at, go straight for the sharp knife. Now, can we identify what part, no, put that down. Can we identify what part of the plant this is?
The root.
The root. So we've got a really big taproot here. There you go, carrot. We've got a really big taproot here with the radish. And then these bits, you know what these are?
The roots.
These are the adventitious roots. So we have a taproot and adventitious lateral roots. Now, do you know what the purpose of the root is?
To make the plant, to make the veggie or something, to get the water and food.
That's right, exactly. This is the part that lives below the ground. And what it does, the lateral roots are really important because they have a higher surface area to volume ratio. Do you know what that means?
No.
So that means that, do you see how they're really long and thin and skinny? So there's as much outside as inside the root. Whereas this, all of the stuff is inside, isn't it? And there isn't that much. So that means that has a low surface area to volume ratio. So these bits are really efficient at going out into the soil and absorbing all of that soil water that has the nutrients dissolved in it. And what's really clever is within here, so you can see, you might be able to see this tiny root hairs. They're the most efficient at absorbing soil water because they're really, can you describe those?
Tiny.
They are tiny, aren't they? They're very fine. And then within the root there is a membrane that is selectively permeable. Do you know what that means?
No.
So selectively permeable just means that it can choose what goes in and out, a bit like your mouth. You can choose not to eat. What would you choose not to eat? Aubergine.
I'd eat that.
Okay, hummus.
Yeah.
But you would choose to eat a fish finger. So that's basically what the roots do. And then the roots, they do grow and they have apical meristem. And this is, the root will always, you can see that no matter the direction of the wind, the root has gone straight down. And that's called geotropism. That means it goes towards the centre of gravity. And you can see this is also geotropism. So the root goes towards the centre of gravity and the shoot goes away from the centre of gravity. So even though it's laying on the floor, it's been blown over by the wind, the stem sorted itself out to grow directly away from the centre of gravity. So do you see we've got this kink in the middle, but the root is still going down and the stem is still going up. Now, tell me about the stem. What do you think about the stem?
It's massive.
It is quite massive. What do you think its job is?
To make new plants and seeds.
Yeah, kind of. So we know what this lad has done, don't we?
Yeah.
This has sorted out, absorbed all the nutrients. Now where's that nutrients going to go?
To the stem.
Yeah, it's got to go all the way up to the leaves, because why are the leaves important?
So they can give shade.
Not necessarily. Really, the leaves are looking for sunlight, aren't they? And what do they need the sunlight for?
To grow.
They need the sunlight for photosynthesis. Yeah, the reason leaves are green is because they're full of something called chlorophyll. And the chlorophyll, it's the only process on Earth where we can't, but a plant can harness the energy from the sun and turn it into a chemical source of energy. It turns it into carbon. And then the carbon is what the plant uses to grow. That's what makes the sugars. So let's have a look in the stem. Do you want to chop that open, babe? Or you can chop open the carrot, because the carrot is really chunky. So let's see.
Here?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Now, hand at the end. That's it. Do you want me to have a go? It's tough, isn't it? It's tougher than a carrot. It's been growing too long, do you see? Should we try breaking it?
Snap it.
Snap it. We need a meat cleaver like Uncle Theron had the other day to chop his bread. No. Secateurs. Always have your secateurs in the kitchen. Ready? Catch it. Obviously, you can never prune by twisting your secateurs, just to be right. So let's have a look inside. And what we can see is right in the middle. What's the difference in colour?
Because the middle's darker and the outside's lighter.
Yeah, so what do you think is in the middle, being transported up the middle?
The oxygen? No, the carbon.
Water.
Yeah,
so the water with all the nutrient solution.
it's more wetter than...
Yeah.
And this is...
And then around the outside is where the nutrient... And that's where all the nutrients travel. That's really cool, isn't it? So the stem is important not just for transporting water and nutrients, but have a feel of it. What do you think? I mean, like the weight of these flowers, I mean, they're not...
It makes them pretty heavy.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy. So what do you think the stem needs to do? Do you think it needs to be floppy, or do you think it needs to be pretty tough?
Pretty tough.
Pretty tough. So the stem is the support. Look at the tiny root. So this root is actually quite small because it's flowered, so it's taken all the energy that was stored in there. And another function of the lateral roots is to provide the anchorage in the soil and to keep the plant steady. But, I mean, you look at the weight this stem is carrying, that's incredible, isn't it? Can you even lift that?
Wait, there we go.
It's big, isn't it?
I can lift it.
So, there we are. That's what stems do. And next we've got, pop it down. We've got the foliage and we've got the leaves. And do you remember what the function of the leaves is again? Do you remember what makes them green?
Grow. The sunlight, to catch sunlight.
Exactly, to catch the sunlight. And then it converts the energy from the sun into chemical energy, into carbon. So the plant doesn't absorb carbon through the soil, it makes its own.
Makes rain.
And that is how the carbon cycle starts. So if we didn't have plants,
It's raining.
the whole carbon cycle is about people eating plants, which contains carbon. And then, so a cow eats the grass, and then it captures that carbon, and then we eat the cow, and the carbon continues, and then all the waste and everything we create is how the carbon returns to the earth, and that's how carbon is stored in the earth. But if we burn something, we release the carbon back into the atmosphere, and then sometimes the plant might take it in through its leaves as well. But also it can create its own, which is why plants are magical. Now, right at the top, what have we got here?
The flowers.
The beautiful carrot flower. And umbellifer. Isn't it beautiful? Look at all the tiny
And
little
the roots
flowers.
are pretty tough.
The roots are tough. You have to roast them for a long time, aren't they? You can tie knots in the lateral roots.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're pretty decent. Anyone who's ever tried to dig a dandelion out of a lawn knows how tough roots can be. Well, if you think about all the high winds that the plants have to stand up in, it's pretty intense, isn't it? So what job do the flowers do you think?
Make seeds.
Ah, and how do they make seeds?
Do
they do it by themselves?
Yeah. No.
No, not necessarily. And certainly not this one. What does this one, why is this one pretty? And what's within this flower that makes it attractive?
The carbon.
Nectar. Nectar, and what does nectar attract?
Bees.
Bees and other pollinators. So look, there's one there.
What's a pollinator?
So then the pollinator comes in and it it takes the pollen off of the stigma and then it wipes it on the stamen. Isn't that cool? So all of these tiny little flowers have the capacity to now become a seed.
I've done 3, I've done 4 knots and it's still not breaking.
That's amazing. You could use it to make your house. So how many seeds do you think there are in just this one flower?
About 100.
100, are you sure? I think there might be quite a lot more than that.
200?
Thousands, I would say. So we'll look at flowers in more detail later, but once the flower has been pollinated and the pollen has travelled down the pollen tube and fertilised the ovary of the plant, it forms this. Now this is off the radish plant. So what is this?
It's the seed pod.
The seed pod, so the fruit. We think of fruit as just the fruit we eat, but actually any body of the plant that is formed by the ovary tissues of the plant is the fruit, and it contains the seed. The seed is just the embryo.
Ooh, it broke then.
So think of the different functions. Why do you think this seed pod, look at the little seeds in there, look at them. It's a bit like a broad bean, isn't it? Yeah. So, careful. Chop it off. You'll have to chop it off. Oh.
It's super tough.
It's super tough. Here you are. So how many knots is that you've formed in a lateral root?
5.
5. That's not bad, is it? That's pretty strong.
Yeah. No, about 10. I put 10 in.
So why do you think different plants create different fruits? So the carrot hasn't, has it? If we look at the flower, the carrot isn't getting these big old pods, is it? It's making tiny little seed packages. Look. So they're not the same, are they? Even though it's just to create a seed. You just tie knots in a root now.
Yeah.
So why do you think some plants create big fruits and some create small fruits?
Because the plants, because if they make big fruits, the plant is big, but the little plants make little fruit.
Or what about acorns?
Oh man, those massive.
Yeah, they turn out pretty massive, don't they?
Yeah.
And remember the broccoli seed that we sowed? That was tiny, and that turned out a pretty big plant, didn't it?
It's because they get more nutrients.
Well, there's a truth to that. So something like a runner bean seed or a broad bean seed is much bigger because it's containing a lot of food, and then that food comes out in the cotyledons, which is the seed leaves. But what about an apple? What's an apple tree trying to make happen to its apples?
To get them picked.
To get them... What happens after you pick it? Eaten. So it wants it eaten. Whereas the carrot seed doesn't want to be eaten. It's very small and light. So how is it going to spread around the place?
Yeah. By the wind. The
wind, exactly. So it can be small and light. So we're starting to look at why different parts of different plants are different. But if you go outside and you dig up a few things and you have a look, And if you plan to do some root cuttings, which we might do soon,
it's a mini helicopter.
It's a really good idea to explore all the routes while you're looking at it. But I hope that gives you an idea. There'll be a worksheet available as well, and hopefully Howard will be doing some diagrams for me later and fully annotating them. So we'll share those too. Have fun.
No.